LBC 97.3 Book Club. My two guests tonight are Alfie Boe and James Herbert. I'll be talking to James Herbert after 9:30 about his new book, Ash. He's one of Britain's most well-known, widely respected horror writers. Really looking forward to that. I used to read all his books when I was in my teenage years. Actually, I think I started reading James Herbert. But let's start off with Alfie Boe. His book is called Alfie, My Story. It's published by Simon & Schuster in hardback at $18.99. Now, I spoke to Alfie a little bit earlier, and I started by asking him if he always dreamed of being an opera star from an early age.
No, I didn't actually. You know, that wasn't really the first thing that came to my mind when I started singing. I always had daydreams of being a rock star or being a popular singer. On,
Don't we all?
You know, stand in front of the mirror with a hairbrush or play a imaginary guitar on a tennis racket, that sort of thing. And then when I got older, I used to play the drums. So I always thought I'd become a rock drummer or something, or part of a band. And but being when I got the break to become an opera singer, it was like a foot in the door into the industry, really, for me. And so I thought, well, I've got to have a go somehow. You know?
But we all think we're brilliant singers as kids.
I still do.
Yeah, but you are. That's the point. I'm not, and I had to recognise that at a very early age. When did you realise that you had a voice that was unlike any other?
Oh my goodness. I think as an artist in general, I think you always are correcting yourself and always thinking you can do better. You can always improve on your ability. So I don't really think I've ever got to a stage where I believe that my voice is fantastic, that this is it for me, I can't go any further, because I think if that was the case, then you might as well stop singing.
But even when you're standing on a stage and you've got thousands of people watching you, really appreciating what you're doing, they're giving you a standing ovation,
yeah,
you still think to yourself, yeah, I can do better than that.
Well, it makes you feel good, that, I've got to say. but yeah, I think you can always improve. Yeah. I want 100,000 people on, cheering, or I want to. I'm discovering parts of my voice now that I never knew existed, never believed I could produce. I'm singing a lot of different repertoire now that's bringing a side of my voice out that I didn't know existed, didn't know was there, and it's a very passionate, very sort of emotional, heart-rendering sensation I get on stage. I really put everything into the songs that I'm doing and bring out a side of the voice that emotionally makes me feel like I'm giving everything I ever have.
What style of music do you really like singing best? Because I heard something you're not actually a great opera fan.
No, I like singing thrash metal and punk.
Really?
No. I like. It's funny. I like music that makes me feel good. Whether that's classical, whether that's blues, country, and folk music. Country music is something that I really connect with at the minute. I'm finding that sort of repertoire sits in my voice really well and tends to lie in a similar position to where, to not get too technical about it, but lie in a very similar position to the way I approached opera and the way I approached classical music.
Because the opera world can be a bit snooty about things like that, can't they? They don't
Yeah.
particularly like their own going out and doing other forms of music. And I can imagine sort of some opera journalists thinking, oh my God, he likes country music. How awful, how ghastly is that?
You kind of have that. Yeah, I've had that a few times. What I think the opera establishment don't like is that aspect. Is an opera singer going off and, say, making a jazz album. The minute I started to make albums, it was with a radio station, and my first album was a classical operatic album. But the minute I started making albums and putting myself out into the public eye, I opened myself to criticism with the establishment. If I can popularise classical music to a younger audience, to an audience that haven't had the opportunity to experience it, that's great. What I try and go out and do now is just introduce people to good music and show that there aren't any boundaries between these areas, these genres. There's no difference between country and folk and blues and opera and classical repertoire. I don't believe that there are any boundaries, and And all I am doing is, if they like an album of country music that I release, they are going to go out and look at everything else that I've done.
Now, you explain in the book how one brief encounter with a stranger helped you get the break that really, brought you here today. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I used to work in a car factory in the north of England, and when you're a kid, you get told a lot to get yourself a trade, then you'll always have something to fall back on. Once you've had your apprenticeship as a joiner or a plumber, whatever, you can then go off and pursue your dreams, pursue your goals, and have the career that you want to have. And if it fails, you'll always have something to fall back on. So that was really what I set my sights at doing as a young teenager. I got myself a job in a car factory as an apprentice body mechanic, and while singing along to the radio one day in the car factory, I was overheard by a customer who was buying the car that I was working on, and said, "You've got a good voice, you should try and do something with it." And he told me about an opera company in London that were auditioning for members for the next tour. And I came down to London, had this open audition, sang to them. I was dressed like a scruffy lumberjack, with check shirt, jeans, boots, and my work boots covered in grease from the day before, surrounded by all these opera singers who were wearing pristine suits and
that must have been quite a decision, though, to actually do that. Or was it something you'd always wanted to do, so it actually wasn't a big decision? You just thought, okay, here's my chance, I'm going to grab it.
What I wanted to do was to get into the industry. What I wanted to do was to break into the entertainment industry. I wanted to become a singer, because I remember the moment that it happened for me. I was cycling to work, and I had this sort of, for the sake of it, an epiphany in my head that sort of said, you've got to get back on stage, you've got to sing, because I'd taken a break from being in amateur productions, and I found a local amateur operatic society that were putting on a production of West Side Story, and I went along to join the chorus and to sing in that production. I was happy to do that, and as it happened, they offered me the lead role of Tony in the show. And from doing that, I got a lot of people encouraging me every single day, telling me, "You've got a good voice, you should do something with it, you should do this, you should do that," and giving me all these different options. Then this guy at the garage told me about the auditions. I thought, I have a chance here. People are filling me with these suggestions and this confidence to go for it, to not be scared of it. And so I basically did. I tried out in London. It was an exciting time. It was a nervous time. I didn't really want to risk anything that I'd developed at home. And as it happened, it paid off. I got taken on by the company. I came back, handed in my notice, and went on the road with an opera.
And what did all your friends at the time think? Back up in the northwest.
My friends in the garage were thrilled. Partly because they didn't have to put up with my singing around the factory all the time. But the thing is one of the guys, I remember him, Ernie, and he was a great friend, great mate. He said, "Look, you've got the chance of doing this job. You've got the chance of going off to be a singer, to do something that you love, on the road with a touring company. You get to see a lot of the country. You'll be singing every night." He said, "Don't waste your time here." He said, "I'll get you caught and I'll kick your ass out of here," basically, and it was wonderful, really.
And what happened when you got to London? Was it really hard work to establish yourself?
When I got in the company working on the productions, it was quite a tricky time, because I was pedaling water. It's like I was treading water and to keep my head above the water, because it was I couldn't read music. I didn't know what the process of a rehearsal schedule was like. I was surrounded by a lot of people that I'd never really been in contact with. Coming from a small town in Fleetwood, there was lots of theatrical types, lots of egos, lots of characters around, and I was thinking, is this really me? And I identified with a lot of different people that were similar to me and came from similar backgrounds. So I made a lot of friends. I learnt quickly. I had to learn quickly. I had to learn how to read music quick, and to bluff my way through a little bit to a degree. But it was an exciting time, and I knew that this was the start. I knew that like I'd taken my first step on the ladder, really, to making it in the industry.
And the first time you appeared on stage in a proper part, what was that like?
That was actually that was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster. I started the first show that we did was HMS Pinafore, and it was the opening night of Pinafore at the Alexandra Theatre in Birmingham. And the first people on stage was myself and two other colleagues in the chorus, sailors. We had our kit bags over our shoulders, and we're doing this sailor swagger on stage, you know, the jaunty little roll. And just before we burst into this little tap dance routine, we have to throw our kit bags off into the wings. I threw my kit bag off into the wings and caught the cable that was attached to the machine that brought the curtain in. So my kit bag belted this machine, it landed on the floor, hit the down button, the curtain came flying in, I got crushed with this curtain. My colleague, I was crawling upstage underneath the curtain, my other colleague was upstage of the curtain anyway, and then there was one guy out front on his own, poor fella, and he had to improvise.
And this was the first night?
This was the first night.
Well, I bet you didn't do it again.
I didn't do it again, but that was like my first experience on the professional stage.
And it presumably got a bit better from there.
I've had no curtains drop on me since. I've always been a firm believer in whenever anybody asks you to sing or asks you to do anything, just do it. Don't hesitate. Sing, perform, whatever, because you never know who's going to be listening or watching. So I've had those opportunities and lots of different concerts that have projected me to the next level. And of course, obviously, the Les Miserables, you know. And
I mean, you're a big name in America as well.
It's getting there. I'm working hard at developing it in the States. That's an important part for me because I have a lot of connections with America. My wife is American, and I've spent a lot of time there. I love America.
And that's the voice of Alfie Boe. I was speaking to him a little bit earlier. We'll be hearing much more from him in just a second about his book, My Story. And coming up at 9:30, we'll be talking to James Herbert. Can't wait for that. It's 9:16.
I was a little kid at home on the beach of Fleetwood in Lancashire, listening to my Walkman, you know, with the Beach Boys blasting down my ears and Elvis and all that sort of things, and all the 1950s songs that I used to drum along to. I just thought I've got to get to where this music was born, and I always wanted to get there. And I remember the first time I landed in New York, I couldn't believe I was sat in a yellow cab. You know, I couldn't believe I was driving into Manhattan. Couldn't believe I had $1 in my pocket, and I was about to eat a really dodgy hot dog off the street corner. You know, and it was a wonderful feeling. It was like I'd been given an amazing opportunity, and like my life had started again in a way. It was like being reborn. And this was for my audition for La Boheme. And then after my audition, I got a phone call that night offering me the job. So it was like a real big decision to make, because when you read in the book, I was actually at the Royal Opera House on the Villa Young Artist programme. So it was a 2-year contract. And there was a big, heavy decision that hit me like a ton of bricks, really, to try and decide on leaving a place where I'd wanted to be since I started singing classical music, or go off and do something really exciting with an amazing director in an amazing part of the world on Broadway. It was like, and I thought, it's a difficult thing to decide. I wasn't happy initially anyway at the Opera House. There was things in the programme that didn't sort of ring true to me, and it was like going back and being a student again, and I'd done all that. So I was in a bit of a dilemma, and that hit me at the end of my trip in New York, on like, I've got to get on a plane again and come back and face the music. So it was a little scary. I came back and I told them, and it didn't go down very well. And I thought, to hell with you. So, and I left. I served my time out. It was a hard period to serve out because there was issues with the programme that I really didn't like and I didn't find were very productive.
Opera is very political, isn't it?
Hell yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think more than any other musical sector, probably.
It is. It's very political. There's too much sort of protection over this art form. Too much protection over the music. The music is to be listened to. You know, no matter what genre of music you're from, no matter what sort of singer you are, whether you're a blues artist, jazz singer, classical singer, all you are is a storyteller. All you're doing is telling stories. And that's all I am now. I don't call myself an opera singer anymore. I don't call myself a classical tenor. I just want to be known as a singer, somebody who's telling a story, and that's all that opera singers do. So we're all doing the same job. We're all delivering music to the best of our ability.
And how difficult was the transition from singing opera to musical theatre?
Well, I mean, I've never really hashed my approach when it comes to singing. I've only used the ability that I have. I've only used the technique that I've developed myself, the technique that I've trained at college and stuff, and so I breathe the same way, I support the same way, I deliver the sound the same way. The only thing when I have to do anything like a rock song or popular music, I switch a little around the pronunciation. I put on an American twang a little bit just to popularise it.
Ingratiate yourself with Americans. That's what you're trying to say.
Not that I want to break away from England. I love England. I love it so much here.
Now, how did you feel when Sir Cameron Mackintosh asked you to play in the 25th anniversary concert of Les Mis? I mean, that was a stunning production, wasn't it?
That was an incredible moment. Cameron Mackintosh and Claude Michel Schoenberg gave me an incredible opportunity, you know, to really turn my career around and really open up another door for me, and I'll be eternally grateful for them for that. The minute I got the phone call, the minute that the decision was there to make, I just thought, this is an opportunity not to be wasted. I have to do this because this could bring in a completely different audience for me. And it did.
Hugely.
Absolutely. And I was thrilled. I couldn't believe it.
I mean, I'd never heard of you before that.
Me neither.
But I mean, after that, every time I switched on the radio, there was this chap called Alfie Boe. And I was like, well, who is this man?
Well, at least it wasn't Crime Watch you were turning on.
This is true. But I mean, looking back on it, did you realise how significant it was going to be? I mean, when you walked on that stage for the first time, did you think, yeah, this is it. This is what's really going to translate me into a different league?
At the moment I was on stage, the time throughout the whole show on stage, I was the only thing I was focused on was portraying the character. I couldn't let anything else enter my head, really. I couldn't let, even when I was singing the famous song "Bring Him Home," all I was focusing on was the words and the music and the sentiment behind it and the emotion, and that came across pretty well. And it got an amazing reaction. And even after I'd had that adulation from the audience and people on the feet, 20,000 people stood up and cheering, and I didn't notice it. I just walked off stage after my moment, came off, and Matt Lucas was at the bottom of the stairs, and he threw his arms around me and he said, which was a bit off-putting when Matt Lucas throws his arms around you, but no, he said to me, "Alfie, tonight a star was born." And I said, "Who's that?" And I didn't know what he was on about, but he was throwing a compliment to me on the Bring Him Home, and that was how much I was actually engrossed in the show.
I mean, I can remember watching it on TV, and I went to see Les Mis at the Theatre Donkeys years ago, and frankly didn't really like it very much.
Right.
But I watched it, and you could just get a sense of the occasion and the emotion that was running through everybody. And I mean, I'll cry, as I've said before on this programme, I'll cry at Emmerdale, so don't take me as an example. But I mean, I was sitting there with tears rolling down my face. It was just one of those occasions where you think, wow. I mean, that was a moment that people, I think anybody who was actually in the O2 at the time will remember for the rest of their lives.
You've got to say that. I mean, that I was calling it an opera. I mean, it is an opera as far as I'm concerned. It's something that stood the test of time, and that's all opera is, and that's all the operatic productions, Mozart operas, Verdi operas, Puccini operas, are pieces of music that have stood the test of time, and it has nothing to do with the opera houses. It's just quality music. And that's the same with Les Miserables. It's classic. It's a classic piece of music that's.
And you went on to play the same character in the Queen's Theatre for 5 months.
Yeah,
and doing it night after night. Yeah. That's what I've always quite admired about actors who are in musical theatre. They do the same thing night after night. Is every performance a little bit different, though?
You have to find, I mean, you have to find something different in it, but inevitably it is, the way it works anyway. You go on stage and there'll be something slightly different than you did the night before, and you think, wow, that was interesting, that was quite cool to do, but then the following night you won't do it and it'll be something else that was interesting. And with the character of Jean Valjean that I was playing, it was a real in-depth character to really grasp and really achieve everything that you could from him, and he's a character that will always live within me and that I know I can always bring out.
So you struck up a good friendship with Matt Lucas doing all of that. Can we expect to see you in Little Britain at all in the future?
I don't know. I mean, Matt's got a lot of projects on the go. I think, he's doing his chat show, which I think he wants me to be a part of at some point, probably to just completely humiliate me. But Matt's a great guy. Love him to pieces. He's like a brother to me, I'd love to work with Matt again. Maybe we could do some writing of something together at some point.
Now, what about the Diamond Jubilee concert? Because you sang in that. That must have been the most astonishing evening.
That was boring, really. No, my goodness. The biggest concert of my life.
Was there any sort of competition among the different artists there that you could notice?
Not as I noticed. I mean, I was. We were all in the same complex together in the dressing rooms, and I was happy to say that my dressing room was next to Cheryl Cole's, and I didn't drill a hole or anything like that in the wall. It was all absolutely fine. But she did walk into my room, and I fell off my chair at one point, and very embarrassing. But no, she's a lovely girl, and I was next door but one to Will.i.am and Jessie J, and it was a crazy day, absolutely crazy day, but a wonderful celebration. I mean, it was an amazing thing to be a part of.
When you go out onto a stage like that, and if you've played the O2, probably you don't get the same kind of nerves as you might have done a few years ago. But I mean, you must have known the huge audience that would be watching that. What's going through your mind?
I get nervous, and I get nervous, man, on the smallest of gigs. I think I'll always have an element of nerves because it's what makes you the artist that you are. It's what makes you do well on stage. Going out onto the Jubilee stage was something else because I was looking down the Mall and seeing nearly 200,000 people, and knowing that it was being broadcast to millions. You've got on the stands at the sides, you've got 30,000 people in there already, and it was just a fantastic atmosphere because I looked out and everybody was laughing and dancing and waving flags and just having a really good time. So that was what I wanted to do as well. I wanted to be a part of them and be a part of the whole celebration. And so when I went out and did the song O Sole Mio and burst into the Elvis, I just thought, yeah, let's go for it, just have a good time.
You finally got to achieve your dream of being a rock singer. I mean, what's the next big project? You've had 2 top 10 albums. You've got the book out now. What's the next big thing?
I've just recorded a new album. Just got a new album that's going to be out in November.
Don't tell me it's country music.
It's not country music, but it's got an element to it. But it's quite rocky. It's quite bluesy. a little bit of a gospel feel, but in a rocky gospel way.
I can see you doing gospel.
Yeah, it's quite cool. It's quite cool. There's some lovely songs on there. Some that I've been playing live already in the concert. Yeah, that album will be out in November.
Well, Alfie, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the LBC Book Club. Alfie's book is Alfie, My Story by Alfie Boe, Simon & Schuster, hardback, 1899. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ian.
And I was speaking to Alfie Boe a little bit earlier. What a truly lovely guy. One of the nicest people I've ever interviewed here on LBC 97.3. Well, coming up in a couple of minutes' time, we'll be talking to James Herbert. He's the author of Ash, the #1